Emma Lowe, Learning Programme Manager for the NIHR Clinical Research Network. Welcome to this presentation on rethinking your continuing professional development. In delivering clinical research in the NHS and the wider health and care system, we face a variety of challenges as medicine, technology and healthcare change. For example, we're seeing increasing digitisation, wearable devices, a shift towards prevention, research in new care settings and contexts, and rapidly evolving science, such as gene therapies, personalised medicine, and nanotechnology. The way we do research is also changing, with increasingly complex study designs and new regulatory frameworks. In delivering clinical research, you are often the first people to deliver new approaches in practice, finding ways to make them work in regular care settings. You do all this in a complex context. People delivering research work across over 200 NHS trusts and around 3,000 GP practices with a variety of employment and funding arrangements. Many of you are registered health professionals and some of you are carving out a career as research delivery practitioners. Some of you identify strongly with your clinical specialty, while others see research as their specialty and make it their primary focus. Some of you work only on specific kinds of research and in clearly defined ways, while others work across all kinds of research, adapting their activities as needed to ensure effective delivery. It's in this context that your employer, your manager, your professional body, or in our case, your funder, aims to ensure you have the skills you need to deliver and support high-quality clinical research and patient care. And it's also in this context that you manage your own professional development. In this presentation, I'll explore some models and tools which I hope will help you navigate and take ownership of your professional development, particularly in this rapidly changing context. These might be quite new ideas, or you might already be familiar with them. Either way, I hope it will make you think and provide a useful opportunity to reflect on what you're doing now and what could serve you better in the future. When we think about learning at work and professional development, we often think about formal, structured activities such as courses, qualifications, or formal coaching and supervision arrangements. These are important and certainly have a place in our overall development. But they are not the only ways that we learn. In fact, they are a relatively small part of it. A useful model which helps us to think about this is Jane Hart's modern workplace learning model. Hart describes 4 broad areas of learning activity. Structured learning, which could be events, courses, e-learning or formal mentoring or supervision arrangements. Resources, which are available on demand at the point the person needs them, such as job aids, tip sheets and templates. Social learning, which is really any kind of learning with other people. Social learning can take place online using social media and other collaboration tools, but it could also be a chat with a colleague or participation in a community that meets face-to-face. And personal learning, which is learning you do independently. This could be reading or watching useful resources, and also time practicing and applying what you've learned to your day-to-day work. This model isn't a process where you follow each way of learning in order. It's a mixture of all the activities, unique to every individual, depending on what you need to learn and the best way for you to learn it. To give you an example, think about the last time you got a new mobile phone. How did you learn to use it? Maybe you accessed some resources, such as the Quick Start Guide or a manual. Maybe you watched a YouTube video to figure out how to do something in particular. Maybe you chatted to your family or friends to see if they knew how to do something or could help you figure it out. Or maybe you just played with the phone until you figured it out on your own. You probably did a combination of these, in whatever order was most useful for you at the time, finding out some essentials to get you started and then learning more as you went along. This is how we learn every day. And although I'm talking about a mobile phone in this example, the principle is just as applicable to learning anything else. We might access courses and resources, but we also learn with and from others and do a lot of learning independently. In fact, you can't learn only from courses and resources. You need to apply your new knowledge to your day-to-day work, trying it out in practice and refining your approach as you become more experienced. And it's important that we recognise and value the time this personal learning takes and the difference social learning can make in that refining and sense-making process. We know instinctively that this is true, and yet we sometimes forget this in the workplace. As individuals, we can become reliant on or expect our organisations to provide us with everything we need. And some organisations can be very prescriptive about what you need to learn, when and how. We can block our own development by placing or not removing barriers to our learning. And we can also have our development limited by practical barriers being imposed on us, most often time and technology. So how do we change this? How can we take a more rounded approach to our learning, finding the right mix of activities for us, which matches what we need to learn and the best way for us to learn it? A good start is to take a planned, intentional approach to your own learning and professional development. Take some time to think about what your development needs might be. You might find it useful to do this as a structured activity, or maybe just as guiding principles for a higher level review. Do this to the degree that it is useful for you. There are two strands to this planning, which are related but different. They are the projects, studies or challenges you're facing in your day-to-day work, and your role or career more generally. Separating these two helps us think more broadly about where we're heading and how to get there, as well as the day-to-day realities of our current job. Thinking about your role or career will be unique to you. Maybe your career ambitions are to move into semi-retirement. Maybe you aren't so focused on your career because you're balancing commitments out of work. And maybe you want to progress to the next level or gain specialist qualifications. All of these are great and belong in your own review of your development needs. For both your current activity and your wider career, you might have development needs which feel very immediate that you need to address now. There might be others which you know are coming but aren't so immediate, and others which are on the horizon. You might not know what these mean to you yet, but they feel like something that you need to have an awareness of in order to keep pace with the changes and challenges happening around you. What this range of development needs looks like will be different for everyone and will change over time. Your previous experience will inform what appears in your own review of your development needs. Your career ambitions will also influence it, and this process can be most effective when we take some time to think about where we want to position ourselves and what might get us there. So this is a combination of what do I need to do my job well now, and what do I want to do to invest in myself so I can move towards the future I want. It's also important that you think about the skills and tools you need to support your ongoing learning throughout your career. We've all heard the parable, give a person a fish and you feed them for a day, teach a person to fish and you feed them for a lifetime. This is a good principle, highlighting that it's better to equip people with the skills they need to do things for themselves than to do it for them. But I would suggest we need to take this a step further. Learning how to fish still only equips you to fish today. What happens when techniques change, when new equipment is introduced, or when the environment changes? If you focus only on what you need to learn today, this can be self-limiting and makes you somewhat dependent on other people to continue to enable this. If we think back to the technology and science that was cutting edge 10 years ago and compare it to today, it's changed beyond recognition. Think about the iPhone, the first mainstream smartphone. It's completely transformed the way we use technology in our day-to-day lives, and that was only launched 10 years ago. What new technologies or ways of working are being introduced now that will have completely transformed the way we work 10 years from now? We can't imagine how different things will be in 15 or 20 years' time. But for many of us, we do know that we'll still be working, and we will need to adapt and change our practice to accommodate and make the most of the opportunities these changes will bring. So I'd like you to think about a different take on the parable, one that influences my approach as a learning and development professional and is a part of why I'm speaking to you today. My version is, give a person the answer and they can deliver for a day. Enable a person to find the answer themselves and they can deliver for a lifetime. The essential skill isn't the thing that you need to do today, although that's still very important. The essential skill is being able to learn and adapt so you can do what you need to every day. So consider whether you have these skills. Do you know how to access and participate in learning across the whole spectrum of the modern workplace learning model? Or is this something that you need to invest more time in developing? You might find Harold Jarkey's resources on personal knowledge mastery a useful place to start, and there are links to this on the Rethinking Your CPD site. Before you jump straight to addressing the needs you've identified, to help you find the best way of learning what you need to, consider whether you are just starting out or it's something you already understand and you need to now take it further. Going back to the mobile phone example, have you owned that brand before and just need to get to know the new features, or are you a first-time user? Are you feeling confident you can figure this out as you go, or do you need something to get you started so that you know that you've got the basics right before you go further? For people very new to clinical research delivery, there is a lot to learn. There are essential ethical, practical and legal standards. There may be core competencies you're expected to achieve in your practice. You need some foundations in these in order to make your further learning make sense. People are very good at managing their own learning. In the absence of a course or a resource, we are all more than capable of finding out what we need to know and putting this into practice. However, this is slow and can be very time-consuming and has the potential to be unsafe. How do you know what you don't know? How do you know that the source you're learning from is reliable and is showing you what good looks like in this area of practice? Are you able to find this out on your own quickly enough? Foundational learning is very important in our context, particularly where the safety, dignity and rights of our patients and participants might be affected. But once you have those foundations, the kinds of learning experiences which help you gain them often don't serve you well in the future. Once you know what it means to ensure the safety of your participants and the quality of your research data and why this matters, what you really need is opportunities to explore how this applies in your role, to the studies you're working on, and to learn from and with other people trying to do the same. We all need foundational learning at key points, particularly where we are transitioning into doing something new. Maybe you're an experienced research delivery professional who is very skilled and competent in delivering studies. If you started to work on a study involving children or adults lacking capacity to consent for the first time, you might have very immediate learning needs around the requirements and practices which are very new to you. If you started working on a clinical investigation of a medical device for the first time, you might need some foundational understanding of how these differ from other kinds of studies to do your job well. So have a think about where you are on that spectrum. Do you need foundations, or have you moved beyond that? Have you moved very far beyond that? Next, think about what will be the best way for you to learn about this. For foundations, structured learning or a resource designed for this purpose is usually the best place to start. These help you to quickly learn the essentials so you can move into on-the-job learning very soon afterwards. This could be a course of some kind, or it could be a YouTube video showing you how to do something. Observing and practicing, or see one, do one, is also a great approach. Once you've moved beyond this, it's likely that social or personal learning opportunities will be more appropriate. Being able to discuss your challenge with a community of similarly experienced people, or having the time to read, watch or listen to some resources which might be valuable. Time is often the greatest barrier here, both due to our work pressures and also our own attitudes about what is and is not legitimate activity while we're at work. If you would give yourself permission to attend a conference or a course, taking one or more whole days away from work, but you wouldn't permit yourself time to join an online chat or spend some time reading or watching useful YouTube videos, or visit a colleague to shadow them and learn from them, why not? If the answer is because you wouldn't be allowed, ask your manager why not. By taking a planned, intentional approach to your learning and having thought about the best way to learn it, you should be in a stronger position to make a case for the time to join that community, which meets once a month, or ask for a device which supports you joining online discussions and the time to participate in them during the working day. Maybe the most useful thing is a regular call with a colleague who works in another organisation. Do you put time in your diary for these kind of activities but don't stick to them, or feel some guilt from doing them instead of real work? Because you shouldn't. These feelings are common, but this is real work and it's essential to your effectiveness. Taking a planned, intentional approach can help convince both your manager and yourself that it really is worth the time. It can also help you capture your activity more effectively, maybe for an appraisal, CPD or revalidation purposes. Most professional bodies accept and encourage learning beyond courses and conferences, and the aim of their programmes is to ensure that their members are maintaining their skills and expertise. The more intentional that you can be about this, the more you can define, capture and reflect on your learning and identify what was most appropriate and meaningful for you. Finally, think about where you could access the learning you need. Another useful model from Jane Hart is the modern professional learner. In this model, Hart highlights the various ways in which the modern professional is able to access learning opportunities. The key aspects of modern professional learning include opportunities which are self-organised and provided for you. are offered and accessed both within and outside of your organisations, and are spread across the spectrum of the structured, personal and social learning. What organisations, groups or networks are you a part of? What partnerships and networks is your employer a part of? If you're a member of a professional body, what opportunities might this open up to you? If you're not sure, it's worth investing a little time to find out. For example, there are lots of NHS bodies offering learning opportunities at a national and local level, many of them online, which may be useful to you. Check out the NHS Leadership Academy or the online platform The Edge if you aren't familiar with them, even if you're not working in the NHS. I hope this presentation has been useful and helped you think a little differently about how you approach your continuing professional development. Taking a planned, intentional approach will serve you and the organisations you work with well. It will help you identify not only what you need to learn, but also the best way for you to learn it and the skills you need to continue learning throughout your career. It will also help you navigate your way through the wealth of opportunities available to you and to carve out time in your working week to join them. The models I've referred to are available on the Rethinking Your CPD site where you've accessed this film, along with other resources and links to help you take the ideas I've talked about here into practice. Good luck and thank you for listening.